It should say that you're recording, but I don't see it.
I'll just wait for it.
Okay, there you go.
Hello, I want to welcome everyone today to our Spotlight Faculty webinar. We're going to continue our trend of having some of our most experienced online professors here at Carson-Newman share some of their experiences and their tricks to really make their online classes interactive and beneficial to everyone involved. So today we have Dr. Ernie Walker. He is an assistant professor in the education department, and he's the co-director of educational leadership. He graduated from Carson-Newman with his undergraduate. He did his master's and doctorate at ETSU. He taught in the public education in Hamlin County and retired after 12 years as the superintendent. He's been employed at Carson-Newman since August 2017. He's a member at Manly Baptist Church. He's a deacon at his church, and he's a trustee. So we want to welcome Dr. Ernie Walker. We are excited to have you today.
Thank you. There may have been a typo in there. I've been here since 2007.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
2007, and I could have read it wrong. Our other guest speaker is Dr. Shawn OHare. He is kind of a technology geek. He enjoys spending his time exploring the World Wide Web with the help of Netscape, downloading tunes from Napster, and updating his MySpace page. He is a big fan of Laserdisc and is convinced they are the future of watching movies and are a slight improvement over Betamax. He is also fluent in many languages, including upstate New York, which allows him to conversate with Valerie Stevens. Welcome, Dr. OHare.
And Valerie Stevens is the only one old enough to remember all of that stuff technology-wise. Thanks,
All right.
Thanks, Shawn.
Yes, You're welcome. I needed that today. So we're gonna follow our normal pattern. I'll ask you all some questions. I'll let Dr. Walker go first, and then we'll alternate. So the first question, Dr. Walker, how do you think online teaching and learning in general has changed since you taught your first online class?
Okay, my first class was an undergraduate class, and when I first came to Carson-Newman, I started teaching at the undergraduate level because we didn't have enough graduate students to carry the program for masters and higher at that time. So what we did, I had a class that met twice a week, and I knew that we were coming up on online teaching. So what I did, I designed the class to have one day a week when we would meet online. The other day was the first meeting of the week. We met face to face, and really it wasn't much of an online thing because looking back, a lot of it was just things for them to read and to follow up on to make sure they got ready for the meeting when we were face to face, and then when we got face to face, I could answer any questions they had and so forth. But nowadays, you don't have that luxury of being there with them to explain things. So it's changed a lot in that regard because they have to be pretty astute technologically compared to back in those days when most of us were just beginners and learning how. Of course, the young people always learn faster and know more quickly than I do, and so sometimes I find I'm learning things from them occasionally too. But basically, I think it's changed in that regard. Technology was kind of primitive back then in beginning stages, at least for online, and then as we've gone, it's gotten pretty advanced. This Canvas is an excellent program, and I still run into some challenges quite often, with designing things. But I have found that during the time my past experience told me when you give an assignment or something like that, you've got to thoroughly explain that. If you're not there to explain it in person, you've got to give it in the writing where they can understand it. I've got some ways I could get into that, but I've taken enough time. I think technology has just advanced like everything else in the world has since that time.
Of course, yes, that is a crucial one. So Dr. OHare, same question. How do you think online teaching and learning in general has changed since you taught your first online class?
I agree with Ernie.
Okay.
I think that, just when I first started teaching online, which was probably when Carson Newman started doing it, because I don't know, at this point I probably taught 40 classes online, because during summers and stuff. I felt like a grader. I signed a lot of reading, and then I signed a lot of writing, and I was, just the grader. And with the advancement technology, especially now, the switch over to Canvas, making use of recording videos of myself talking, or this semester I'm giving audio feedback as well as written feedback to students on journal assignments. Makes the course, I think, a little bit more personal. So that's been the biggest change, I think. Like Ernie, it's the technology.
Right. All right, we'll move on to question 10. We'll let Dr. OHare go first. So this is more of a global question. So what do you think is the biggest challenge with online courses at the moment?
Well, when technology fails, which we learned yesterday. I think that is, access. Not all students have access. On the other hand, there's a lot more flexibility. Students can travel. I've conducted courses being in Europe. So there are certain advantages there, but the biggest challenge is the technology breaking down, and that kind of paralyzes the course. I think other than that, if the students are willing to commit to the work ethic that an online course requires, which is self-motivational and different perhaps in an in-person course, they're really kind of self-guiding to a certain extent. It can work really well, but once the technology fails, there are issues.
Yes, I agree 100%. Okay, Dr. Walker, same question. What do you think is the biggest challenge with online courses at the moment?
Well, I don't think it's a big challenge for the students generally, but occasionally you have some people that are not really that familiar with technology when they get in. It's been a few years, but I had this teacher from, I remember she was from Upper East Tennessee. I won't name the system, but she sent me a message after we started the course, and she said, "I believe I'm too old for this." She said, "I'm 52 and I've taught 20 years or 20-some years, and I just think I'm too old for it." So I sent back and I said, "Well, you're definitely not too old." I said, "I'm 70 and I'm teaching the class," or something along that line. And sure enough, she ended up making an A in the course. She got good at it as she went along. She learned it and went on. But I think exactly what Shawn said there, the technology breaking down, just like yesterday. Thankfully, the email was open and students could email me and ask me about things. And some of them didn't know that there was a problem, apparently. One of them said his Canvas down. I've tried to get in with several different browsers and with no luck. And so I communicated on that, but that is a problem. It takes time. When it breaks down, it's you're almost paralyzed as far as really anything you can do constructively, except maybe go ahead and plan for some other things that are coming up in the future.
Right. It's always good to have a backup plan when the technology decides to act up.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to question 3. We'll let Dr. Walker go first this time. What is one piece of advice you would give to an instructor who is teaching online for the first time?
Well, I think I covered a little bit of that earlier, but in making your assignments, you want to make 100% sure that they're clear, because you'll get questions like, if you assign a written paper and you say, make this a 10-page paper and be sure to include title, cover page, make it meet APA requirements, you got to have X number of references and so forth. They'll send back and say, okay, does the title page, the reference page, and the abstract, does that count as part of those 10 pages? I mean, you've got to make it clear in there that what the expectations are to begin with, and that'll save you some time and save them some time. And normally you'll have one or two that'll ask anyway sometimes, because a lot of people don't read. I found that out. That's a big problem. Is I give assignments, put links in there for the for things that will help them with the assignment, the clarification of what's expected with APA, for example. And I just graded a bunch of papers. It's the first one, and I make the first one count less because I know I'm going to get that problem. And the first one was like a 5-point paper. It wasn't much. It was 2 or 3 pages, and they had to design it to meet APA specifications. Well, they've taken the test for APA, but that doesn't teach them how to design a paper. So I give them an example paper, and I give them some copies of stuff from APA that tells exactly what to do, but they don't look at that. They just go ahead and prepare the paper, and practically all of them had the headers in there, running header, which is no longer part of the program since it's now in the 7th edition. So, you'd just mark that down, send it back to them, and the next time when you get one, it's the key assessment for the course, and I'm expecting them to get it right in that. But I wanted to introduce them to it in a shorter version. So that's one thing I would advise, I guess, people that are getting in is start out small and build as you go through the course, because they have to learn some of the things you expect of them, and you're going to be able to move on better in the course and learn. They'll learn more from you if you'll take it in smaller bites to begin with.
Oh, yes, I agree 100%. All right, Dr. OHare, same question. What is one piece of advice you would give to an instructor teaching online for the first time?
I think pacing the course, not only pacing it for the students, the amount that they have to read, but just as important, pacing it for the teacher for grading, because it builds up, over a while. So I have weekly journal assignments, and if I have 20, 22 students, and each student is writing 500 words a week, I have 10,000 words to grade. And, so what I try to do is as they turn it in before the deadline, I try to grade as they're turning it in so I don't have everything to do, because I don't want to fall too far behind before the next week's discussion. So I think, pacing for self-preservation of the teacher is really important.
Right. Yes, that's great advice. Okay, so we have one more question. We'll let Dr. OHare go first this time. So do you assign group work within your online courses? And if you do, what tools do you advise the students to use so those group assignments are successful?
I do not.
Okay. Okay.
I don't really do much group work at all. It's not really a thing we do in English as much, because I really want to know what the individual students think,
Right.
reading a text. So it's even in in-person classes, it's not something other than peer editing that we do that much.
Okay. All right. Dr. Walker, same question. Do you assign group work within your online courses? And if you do, what tools do you advise the students to use to be successful?
I have not used that lately. I think there was a time when I had some group work, but primarily what we do, we work with people that are going to be administrators, and they have to spend a lot of time with their supervisor, because that's a requirement that they do practicums. And that's where I encourage them to communicate with somebody that they can model, that they can watch and learn from, rather than to work with a student from another school who probably doesn't know any more than they do as a rule. But their supervisor, their administrator, is going to know how to run a school, or they're not going to be there. So you watch somebody close, and that's your model rather than community. That's my theory behind it. So I don't use that.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today and letting Dr. Walker and Dr. OHare share their insights and the little tricks that they have that make their classes so enjoyable for their students. I want to encourage everybody to tune in March 23rd, so after spring break, and our guest speakers will be Dr. Buckner and Dr. Love. All right, thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye.